Let's go to our male panel, which has changed, not in personalities, but in functions. David Elliot, of course, the formidable Liberal figure, Minister for Police and Emergency Services, and the newly minted leader of the Labor Party in New South Wales, the alternative Premier, who's been with us from day one here, Chris Minns. David Elliot, to you first. Do you have a word of congratulations for your fellow panellist?
Well, Alan, you're going to need more than good dental hygiene to become the Premier of New South Wales. And Chris has been a Shadow Minister for 4 years and I still haven't seen a policy. However, I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt and let's see how he goes in the next couple of months.
So you don't rate him?
Grudging. Very
you
good.
don't rate him?
Listen, it's as Napoleon said, respect your enemy and, you make sure that you keep them on watch and keep them close too. But I think that what we've got in New South Wales is probably one of the best governments the state's ever seen, and everybody's saying that we've got world's best practice when it comes to the response to the pandemic, and even Chris has admitted that Gladys has done a superior job.
All right, well, Chris, congratulations. How do you dismantle this argument that you were white-handing Jodie Mackay? I just must say something first. I have had a lot of conversations with this bloke over the program, on program matters over the last year. At no time did Chris Minns seek to discredit Jodie Mackay to me. And this sickens me, these excuses that there's gender about all of this. Jodie failed because even though she did her best, she was a reserve grader, not a first grader. Were you running around the branches, white-handing Jodie Mackay?
Alan, no. I was a hard-working member of her team, and obviously it's been a difficult period for the Labor Party, but I think Jodie led Labor during one of the most difficult periods the opposition has had, the Labor Party's had in opposition since probably the split, and I think she did it with class and grace, and it was a very difficult time. I must say that she's been very generous with her time and her staff since I did become leader of the Labor Party, and I owe her a big debt for that. My job now is to unite the team, focus on the future, and look, I'm not going to hurl mud at David Elliot. I think Labor's got a big role to play in New South Wales politics. We want to debate about the future of this state, and that's my job as the new Labor leader. You
mentioned that you listened to Paul Keating deliver his 1993 election victory to the nation's what he called true believers, even at an early age. What did you learn? Because he just pulled off a victory that everyone said was impossible. How does that inspire you? Because Gladys is a formidable opponent.
She is very formidable. I appreciate that. I remember 1993, everybody thought Paul Keating was dead meat except for my dad and probably Paul Keating. So, look, it showed me, Alan, that at the end of the day, the voters are in charge of elections. They make the decision about who they want governing the state and the country, and we owe them everything. They owe us nothing. So my job is to make a pitch to them before March 2023. It's going to be a difficult task. I appreciate that, but politics, anything can happen.
OK, David Elliot, I know you play a team game, but I cannot believe the damage that Gladys Berejiklian has done in taking on the churches on the issue of cemeteries and putting cemeteries, which involves deaths and burials, very sensitive things, in the hands of a bureaucracy which, on its best day, I'd rate 5 out of 10. Do you understand the Premier and her Minister now must back down in a hurry because damage has been done?
Well, Gladys fixed it. I mean, it was a silly decision. Most members of the government said that it was a silly decision. And Gladys stood up, as she always does when silly decisions are made, and said, go back to the drawing board. And that's what's happened. And I look forward to the next submission.
Going back to the drawing board doesn't fix it. Going back to the drawing board doesn't fix it.
Well, nothing's been
Vacate the field, David.
So
when you see a storm coming, get out of the way.
It was a silly decision.
Right, a silly decision.
And that's why.
Chris, can you believe this free kick?
I spoke against it.
Can you believe this free kick?
It was a funny one. We debated it actually on your program last week, Alan. You raised it and devoted the segment to it, and you were right. I mean, winding up a 150-year-old charity that's been servicing the people of Sydney in an efficient way. I mean, it's really important, I think, to note that the Catholic Cemeteries Trust has funds, reserve funds, that cover their liabilities for the next 50 years. They're the only trust that has provision for future growth in cemeteries, and to wind up a
and take their assets,
charity, take their assets off them.
God,
it's been performing well. Look, it was a very silly decision, and frankly, it had been going on for just too long. I'm glad the government's changed their mind, and now we can move forward on a better proposal.
David, you're the police minister. Is telling an untruth on TV a crime?
No.
Well, let me ask you this question.
I would never do it to you, Alan.
No. Was there a hidden agenda here, David? Was Did the Premier intervene at the 11th hour because someone was threatening if a cemetery came near their electorate, that person might resign, David?
Well, my great mate Nathan Rees always whispers in my ear, when it comes to government, if there's a decision between a conspiracy or incompetence, you always go with the latter.
Good on you. Righto. The art gallery, David. I looked at the front page and the inside page of the paper this week, and there were members of your government, the fairly useless Don Harwin and others, celebrating the anniversary of the Art Gallery of New South Wales. How can you justify a $10,000 cake, $2,000 on hot pink carpets, $20,000 on black umbrellas, and $100,000 on an evening when there are businesses out there on the bare bones of their backside if they haven't already gone under? What the hell was every guest getting a gift of an umbrella? Does David Gonski need an umbrella?
Well, Alan, I mean, the outrageous thing here is, of course, there was a party in Sydney and they didn't invite David Elliot and Alan Jones. But seriously, what we saw on that engagement surprised me, because every single person that was invited to that event probably would have been happy to cough up a couple of $100 to be entertained, to attend that function. It is important that we celebrate our cultural institutions.
Of course, but this is taxpayers' money.
I love the art gallery.
Taxpayers' money.
If it was in... If I had $150,000 spare in my portfolio, it'd be on the RFS and SES volunteers.
It's a bad look. It's a bad... Chris, where are the umbrellas for the taxpayer? Was this a Mary Poppins moment?
Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, the government's really told everybody for the last 18 months to tighten their belt. They've given no real wage increase for frontline paramedics, for example, and firefighters and police officers and people who've really dug deep and worked hard on behalf of the public over the last 18 months. And I think it's almost a slap in the face for them when they see the same government spending $10,000 on a cake and $20,000 on umbrellas for a party for the art gallery. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're all in this together and we really are trying to watch our money to get through this very difficult economic time, I think this was in very poor taste.
Unbelievable. I think it was dreadful. David Elliot, is there any merit in what the tradies are demanding for your government, easing driver demerits and providing toll relief to help with the soaring costs of doing business in Sydney? What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm in a different situation because my constituents hate congestion more than they hate tolls, I think. But, I mean, yes, paying tolls is just a price of living in Sydney, and I was thrilled to see North Connects made and opened, and of course there's a toll to it, but it means that my constituents get to the Central Coast beaches within an hour. Yes, the tradies have to pass on the cost to their clients, and the cost of a tradie in New South Wales at the moment is probably a bit steep.
There's a limit to what the client...
That's another issue.
As you know, David, there's a limit to what the client can take. Actually, there's a point at which you can't increase the cost of your service. Chris, Unions New South Wales are asking you to take up the cause to reconnect with the traditional base. It says that by December last year, tradespeople, apprentices and labourers based in Greater Sydney were earning $143 million less each week due to the COVID economic downturn. What about expanding toll relief schemes?
Well, we will look at that very closely, certainly in the run-up to the next election. I've said to the Premier recently, in relation to proposed new toll roads, please don't sign any more contracts with the 4% annual increase in the toll. Inflation is running at most at 2% over the forward estimate. So you cannot have a toll road that has double the rate of inflation for the next 2 decades. That's a rapidly increasing cost for families. They can't afford it. Some families are paying more than $5,000 a year in tolls. So you have to work 5 full weeks in your net pay on average just to afford your tolls to get to and from work. Now, it won't surprise anyone that lives in Sydney. Sydney is the most tolled city on earth. It's gone just too far, and I'm begging the government, please don't sign any more contracts that make a bad situation even worse.
Good on you. Well, thank you to both of you. Good stuff always, David. OK, hope those Parramatta boys get up this weekend, and we'll see you both next week. Well done. Congratulations. Leader of the Opposition, Chris Minns.